end out Zatoichi week. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Zatoichi's Flashing Sword, the final movie we are doing for Zatoichi week, and probably the one with the worst title. I kind of talked about this last time, but the title is just kind of obvious. It's like you could have titled any of the movies up to this point Zatoichi's Flashing Sword, and it would have made just as much sense. Because that's just a recurring thing. That's just part of his character, part of his abilities. His flashing sword is kind of one of the big things he's always known for. It just feels like a kind of a lazy title. And mind you, like, this movie came out in, like, what, 64? It's like all of the movies we've had so far. This is like the 7th film. All of them have come out within the course of basically a year. A year or maybe a year and a half. And it's just like they pumped out these movies so goddamn quickly that I feel like they almost started to, like, lose the idea for titles and everything. But it's like, based on whatever the plot of this one is, you could have, I'm sure, come up with something better. I don't know, it just seems really, like, lacking in creativity, really unoriginal and weak compared to others in terms of titles. Again, I talked about it last time, but, like, even the beginning ones of this series, like Tale of Zatoichi, Tale of Zatoichi Continues, New Tale of Zatoichi, it's like, at least there was a theme going on there. It's like, again, not the most creative names, but at least there was some sort of theming to it. But then you started switching things up with the likes of Zatoichi the Fugitive, Zatoichi on the Run, and so on and so forth. And it's like, some of those are fine. Like, Zatoichi on the Run, not super creative. Or on the road, not on the run. Zatoichi on the Road, not super creative, but it's better than this. At least it describes the movie fairly well, in a way that doesn't describe the other movies. Zatoichi the Fugitive is perfectly fitting for the movie. Even if I didn't like the movie as a whole, it's like the title works. But this, it's just like, this can describe literally any movie. It doesn't feel special. Even if this film in particular, like, really centers around that idea, it just feels like a really lazy naming choice. But again, with them pumping out so many of these so quickly, I mean, I don't even know how they did that. I almost feel sorry for Shintaro Katsu, or Katsu, or whatever exactly it is. We'll see it again. But I kind of feel sorry for him having to, like, work to push these out. I'm sure that these movies didn't have, like, huge budgets and probably weren't, like, insanely demanding recording schedules and stuff. But still, or filming schedules would make more sense to say. But still, it's like, when you're having this many movies come out within this short of a time, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And, I mean, that's one thing I maybe haven't looked up. Maybe I should real quick. I just want to know why, you know? So I put in, like, why were the Zatoichi movies released so often? But I'm not really seeing anything come up for it. Yeah. It just notes that it's one of the longest and most famous samurai film series, with the first released in '62. Okay, so it's been about 2 years for these first 7 movies, but still, 7 movies in the same series in the course of 2 years is insane. That's just wild. And according to this, the 25th film, there's 26 in total in the original series, I guess. The 25th one was released in 1973. So, in the course of 11 years, just over a decade, they released 25 films. That's insane. That's just nuts. And for some reason, the final film of the original series, it says here, was released like in 1989, which is, almost 2 decades after the 25th one. I wonder why that ended up happening that way, but yeah, it's just, I don't get it. I don't get why they release these so often. And I wonder if that's also why these movies are very formulaic. Because outside of a few changes here and there, most of them seem to be very much the same general formula. Like, they change things up enough to where they're still entertaining, where they're not samey enough that they get boring. But they're very clearly, and I've talked about the formula like a couple movies ago, I think, during this week, obviously. Um, the formula is still very clearly there, even in the more unique films, such as Zatoichi on the Road or Chest of Gold. Those are probably the more unique films, but even with that, you can still see the formula there. I do like that they're switching things up enough to where it doesn't get boring, but I do have to kind of wonder if the reason they are sticking to it being so formulaic is because they keep pushing them out so damn quick. Like, over the course of this decade that these movies were being made, I don't know. Did Shintaro Katsu star in anything else during that time? Did he have the time to? Because it's like these movies had to have been like being like filmed non-stop pretty much. Again, even with a small budget, even with like not a lot going into them in that regard, because they're very simple films. There's not a lot of like effects or whatnot, but like makeup stuff is still in there, and you have to account for the filming schedules and everything, and there's a lot that still goes into that even in those days. It's just like, Jesus. It just seems pretty insane to me. It'd be like compacting all of the MCU's catalog into a decade. And it's like, that's just insane. And the MCU has a lot of movies and, shows and stuff as well. But it's been well over a decade at this point. I think we're only like 4 years away from 2 decades. Because I believe it started in 2008 with the release of Iron Man. So it's like, it's been a bit more time. And mind you, during a lot of that time, the MCU has released a lot of movies each year, but a lot of times they're like starring different characters and whatnot. There might be some crossover here and there, but the MCU also has a lot of different main characters for each of its different separate series. With Zatoichi, it's the same main character every time. Just the supporting cast is different. It's insane to think about how that filming schedule must have been. Um, but yeah, I also want to note before we get into this, and we're about to get into this, that after we finish this week and everything, Zatoichi week, we're probably not going to get to another Zatoichi film for a while, just because I'm going to be a little, not really burnt out on them. I'm just not going to want to get back to them for quite a bit. We've watched five, after we watch this one, we'll have watched five in a row in the course of as many days. It's like I'm going to want to definitely take quite a bit of a break. And yeah, that there's still like almost 20 more movies to go. But we'll tackle that in the future. I think I've already said that we might end up doing another Zatoichi week at some point, and we'll just do more as it goes, but we're definitely going to take some time before we ever do one of these kinds of things again. Um, there's plenty more, and they'll come eventually. It's just we're gonna need to have to take a break from this. Um, but that being said, since I have nothing to go off of for this movie because of the title, we should just get on with it and see what this film has in store for us. So, before we start this, I do want to remind you all real quick that we have a lot of great content to check out on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions, and on Monday specifically, we also have YouTube, or at least YouTube adjacent reactions. Shorts, specials, mini-series that just don't have a lot of episodes, or, surprise, surprise, actual YouTube videos. Pretty much anything that doesn't quite fit into a normal series or movie reaction goes in that slot. And speaking of movie reactions, outside of specialty weeks like this with Zatoichi week, we do movie reactions every Saturday and Sunday. I pre-record them during the week, upload them on the weekend, just so that every day has some sort of reaction content going on for it. But just as a last minute reminder, there will be no movie reactions during this weekend because we did the 5 movies during the course of the week. I'm just movied out at this point. Plus, I'm not going to be here this weekend anyway, so it just wouldn't work anyway. But that being said, we also have a couple of Let's Plays that we're doing on the channel as of current as well. We have Horizon Forbidden West, and that is being posted every other day. So you'll have seen one, you'll have seen an episode of that pop up yesterday on Thursday. You'll see one tomorrow on Saturday, and then on Monday and Wednesday, and so on and so forth. Every other day, there will be a new Horizon part being uploaded. We're also playing through Poppy Playtime on Saturdays, because I'm not as great at puzzles as I would like to be. I have recorded enough footage to where I could split it into multiple parts. So Poppy Playtime will continue to be put up on Saturdays. And there's only like 3 parts in total. So this week's and then next week's, and then we'll be done with that. But then we'll go back to Anno Mutationum. So we have plenty more to come in the future. But that all being said, let's get on with the reaction and see what this final movie of Zatoichi week has in store for us. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction because yes, we do redirect all reactions on this channel. I understand. You don't want to have to do all this extra work just to see the reactions. You don't want to have to make all these extra clicks. But it's only one extra click. Just go down to the description below, click the link, you're there. It's all good. And you have to understand, you know that YouTube's copyright system is shit, right? It's really terrible and broken, and because of that, it's kind of dangerous to put the actual content on the channel, even if it's chopped up. You could incur copyright strikes, you could incur a channel termination, and this is stuff you don't want. I mean, I've dealt with it in the past. I don't want to deal with it again because it's the worst. And so because of that, I just want to keep things safe by pushing all the reactions off to another site. On the plus side, this does allow me to give you the full, unedited reactions completely free. That's right, entirely free. No paywalls, you don't have to subscribe to a Patreon, and you don't even have to sync up your own copy. It's all right there just in the file, in the video, on the other site. I think that's pretty cool, honestly, because not a lot of reactors are able to do that for very valid reasons. Whether it be down to monetization, copyright issues, or because, you know, this is literally their full-time jobs. A lot of YouTubers who do these reactions, they can't just give that to you. And that's fair. But I do pride myself on being a channel that is able to give you the full, unedited reactions completely for free. Again, don't even have to sync up your own copy. I just really like giving that to you guys. And I hope you enjoy it. So after you watch the reaction, you can come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will not only contain spoilers to the movie, but just my general thoughts on it, general thoughts on this series and everything, and might even contain stuff related to the channel. You never know. It's always worth checking out just to be safe. So, all of that being said, thank you once again so much for tuning in. And for now, I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we will begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, there's two titles that I feel would have been better for this. Because Zatoichi's Flashing Sword, again, just was not even really that great of a title, even for what we got in this. Especially since the idea of his flashing sword wasn't even, like strongly brought up. I think better titles would have been Zatoichi and the Fireworks. That one makes sense because of the narrative importance of the fireworks. Or it could have been Zatoichi at the Ford. I think that would have worked too. That would have expressed a good amount of the point of the plot and everything, while also bringing a little intrigue about, like, what that entails. Instead, again, Zatoichi's Flashing Sword, it's such a vague-ass title that doesn't really amount to anything. And it's just not that good. Now, this movie, I am split on. I said this during the reaction near the end, and I think that's weirdly almost fitting, because this week we've had movies I really liked, we've had movies I really didn't like, and so we're ending the week on a movie that I'm kind of half and half on. There's certain aspects of this film that reminded me a lot of Zatoichi the Fugitive, especially, like, the obvious points being brought up during the film about him being a fugitive, which I don't think has really been brought up since that movie of that title. It's not really like a consistent plot line in that regard. But it's brought up again here, and it kind of brings back some of those less than ideal traits from that film, with Ichi being more confrontational and aggressive. He's nowhere near as bad as he was in Zatoichi the Fugitive. It's nowhere near to that level, which I'm thankful for. We see a lot of Ichi's better sides in this as well. We see a lot of his kindness, a lot of his gentleness. But he is without question more confrontational and more aggressive than in a lot of these movies, most of them. And I just feel it's again one of those cases where the creators of these movies, the writers, the directors, are just trying all these different things. They're trying all these different styles and themes and ideas and whatnot with these movies to see how the audience will react, to see what will stick. And again, I don't know what audience reaction was to each of these. I don't know like how well The Fugitive did to compared to others, or how well this one did compared to others. But just from my perspective, as a white American viewer who is, living currently in 2024, decades and decades after this movie first came out. Like, how long ago was that? 60 years, I think? Because 64 to 74, 84, 94, 2004, 2014, 2024. Yeah, 60 years. In that time, obviously things are going to be different. And plus, you have the cultural differences as well. There's certain aspects of this that like would be more of a cultural thing that I possibly wouldn't completely understand, just as an American. But there's only what I can really let's reword this because I don't know what the wording was I was going for there was. The only way I can really look at this is from my own perspective. Dog might start barking in a second, by the way. I can only look at this from the perspective of who I am in this time and how I'm interpreting this and viewing this now. Oh, she actually stayed quiet. Good dog. Good Piper. But yeah. And as I'm viewing it here, like I said, those certain elements that came from like The Fugitive and that were very similar to that, I'm just not a fan of. For me, it kind of goes against what Ichi has otherwise been, shown to be, has been written to be. He has a very specific character. He has very specific elements that inform who he is. And movies like The Fugitive and now this one show elements that aren't there at any other time, pretty much. And in fact go against what he's shown to be otherwise. And that's kind of my biggest issue. When I say like he feels out of character in those ways, I genuinely mean he feels out of character compared to the other examples we've had. I'm not saying that just because I don't like what they're doing with him. I'm saying it because I don't feel like it matches with what he's been established to be like. And that's not to say everything in this movie is like that, though. Because I pointed out, like the messy eating stuff, we get to see that in this film. We see his kindness. We see his generosity. How thankful he is when someone does something nice for him. And how forgiving he is when someone might have done something bad to him. We see a lot of his good sides here. A lot of his good sides. And we even see some sides to him that are kind of in between. I like to call them his sassy sides. When he gets not really confrontational or aggressive, but kind of sassy or like challenging or whatnot. Such as when he was testing those the workers who were helping people cross the river and all. When he brought up the idea of the change, he never finished the sentence. He never completed what he was going to say because he wanted to see how they would react. The first guy's like, "Oh, you're gonna." He's like, he says to the first guy, "It's like, oh, about my change," but he stops there, and the first guy responds with, "Oh, you're gonna let me keep the change? Thank you very much." He assumed that he would just get to keep the money. So Ichi responds, "No, actually, I was gonna ask if I could get that back." But the second guy who's like, "Oh, yeah, let me get that for you. Let me get you your change back." So instead, he responds, "You can keep it, actually." He was kind of testing their honor, their honesty, how they would react in a situation like that. And their difference in response shows that the second guy had more honor. He was willing to give it back without just assuming that he was going to be let keep it. And again, this was also, like I pointed out multiple times in the reaction, the same guy who wasn't begging Ichi in the first place for the job to get him across the river. Everyone else around him was begging him, and there's this one guy just sitting there, just not even bothering. And that's why Ichi hired him. That's why Ichi specifically hired him, because he wasn't being annoying, basically. he was being more humble, you could almost say, and not trying to sell himself. See, that I like that stuff, but that's pretty much about as far as I like it when he goes. And I don't like it when he gets very aggressive and confrontational, because it doesn't feel right for him. Like, defending himself and others, sure, that's fine. But when he's like seeking out vengeance and stuff, that's what I don't really like. And we get to see that in this movie. He even makes a point of saying, "I normally don't do this, but you're such an asshole, I'm kind of making an exception." That's basically what he said. And it's just like, I, I, I get what's being said here. I get what's being done. Like, I even like that he acknowledges that he doesn't normally do this. But the fact is, he's still doing it. He's still seeking out vengeance. And that just feels very wrong to me. I'm also really disappointed, and this is kind of the second time I think this has happened, by the fact that they kind of set up this possible rival fight for Ichi to have at the end that just is completely, like, it goes nowhere, and it just ends up, like, not even happening. They set up this samurai guy, I think his name was Tengen, and he's like this, like, kind of intimidating guy who's kind of like hired by Yasugoro and ends up being this kind of like devil on his shoulder kind of thing. He's seen as tough and, you know, intimidating, and they're setting up for him and Ichi to fight at the end. And when Ichi confronts the samurai, this guy and his men, he takes them out so easily, and there's no, like, direct one-on-one fight there. It's so anticlimactic, and feels like his character was kind of a waste just to include some random hired help samurai in here. And the confrontation with Yasugoro, mind you, was definitely more of what I expected. I expected Yasugoro to go out like a bitch and the samurai to be more of the focused fight, instead of the other way around. Yasugoro was... I just never really expected him to be the focused fight, well, and his men. It just felt like it was kind of like... It was... The climax of this film kind of came, not really out of nowhere, but felt like it was just with the wrong person. Because the thing is, Yasugoro himself didn't put up any kind of a fight. He was just being a coward and running away and pushing his men in his way the entire time. And I know he's supposed to look pathetic. I get that he is pathetic. That's the point. But it's just like... Okay. Sure. And then there's like this talk of this magistrate that's kind of on their side, but we never see him. He never becomes an actual character. He's just kind of like this background information thing. We see Yasugoro's sister, who is the mistress of the magistrate, but we never see the magistrate himself, and that's a little disappointing. That just never comes into play. But I mean, it might have felt a little cluttered if they did try to push that in there. To be fair, but it's just like, unless they plan on bringing that same magistrate into the picture in a future movie, it just feels like it kind of wasn't needed. Like, you didn't have to have the magistrate's involvement in any way, because it didn't really feel like it amounted to anything. I really liked Ichi's interactions with the fireworks maker, the fireworks designer, as well as his interactions with I can't think of his name. It's Bachi or Bucci or something like that. That household, basically. um, I remembered Yasugoro's name, and now I'm forgetting the other one's name. But that entire household, I liked his interactions with them and everything. Like, even when he's pushed out at the end, he feels like there's a reason, even right when it happens, and he's just trying to figure out why and everything. But then when he eventually figures it out, he realizes that he was just trying to save him, to get him out of there. Unfortunately, it also led to the boss's death. And apparently the brothers as well. Like, I don't I don't know. It didn't really focus on that. So if that was like just during the big fight scene with Yasugoro's men assailing their compound and all, the brother's death must have just kind of been in there somewhere. It wasn't focused on and all, which is a little disappointing considering his character like had relevance to Ichi throughout the film, because he had shot him and everything, um, all of that jazz. And eventually, when Ichi was leaving, it was clear after he, made it clear that he knew he was the one who shot him. You saw the guilt and everything in his face. But yeah, it was kind of said that he died too. Um, and so now the daughters are kind of like the only members of that family left, because he was the only son. They made a point of saying that. But weirdly enough, like when we see like I'm trying to think of her name. The one daughter there, the one who actually was the benefactor who helped Ichi. When it showed her at the end, when they were like coming in to tell them that Ichi went to go after Yasugoro and everything, she didn't seem really particularly sad or upset that her father and brother were dead. It was a little weird in that regard. Um, in fact, she seemed more like shocked and worried about Ichi at that moment. It was just like, oh, in fact, even before they came in, she was just kind of sitting there, and it's just like, okay. I was kind of wondering for a second if she even knew, but it was made clear enough that she did. Just a weird way to show that. So yeah, I'm mixed on this film, and I'm not even gonna say like it was mostly positive or mostly negative. It's pretty right in the middle. I feel there's good aspects to it. There's bad aspects to it. There's things I'm just not really fond of. But it's definitely not as bad as Zatoichi the Fugitive, so there's that. But yeah, I feel this could have been better, but I feel it could have been a lot worse. So I'll take what I can get. But like I said in the pre-thoughts, we're not going to be getting to another Zatoichi film for a while now, because after this week, it's just like 5 in a row. It's like, I need a break from that. It's not really burnout per se, it's just, I just don't want to get into another one of these for a bit. Like I said, we'll probably do at least one more Zatoichi week in the future at some point, maybe even more than one, because there's 26 films total, at least in this original series run, and we've done 7, so there's 19 more to go. There will definitely at least be one more, maybe two, Zatoichi weeks, and then just other movies strewn about here and there. I don't know when. We'll get to them as we do. But yeah. I still think this was successful, even though not every movie was to exactly my liking. That's going to happen with a series like this that mostly seems episodic. Like, there is definitely some continuity between them, mentioning, like, previous enemies and stuff that Ichi has taken out and whatnot, and confrontations he's had and all. But you could go into any of these movies without ever having seen any of the others, easily. Because they're very episodic and it tells you mostly what you need to know. Though there are some movies I would probably suggest not starting with, such as The Fugitive or this one. The New Tale of Zatoichi, or maybe, what was the other one? Shoot. Give me a second here. I'm trying to remember all of their names here. New Tale Zatoichi was my favorite. So, and I think that one actually has a really good showcasing of what, like, Ichi's character is all about. So it'd probably be a really good one to go into first. But there was another one I was trying to think of that I just can't think of the name right now. That I think would be a good starting point one as well. You have to give this a moment to load up. I'm trying to bring up my list of stuff from this week of reactions I've recorded and all, because that'll tell me, like, all the names there. Just gotta wait for it to load up here. But yeah, I think the best options for it are the ones that really showcase Ichi, like, at his best. And it's like, that might sound like, oh, you would just suggest the ones that you like the most. It's like, well, yeah, I think most people would. And it goes for any kind of long-running series or franchise or whatnot. It's like, oh, which one do I get into first? A lot of people are going to recommend the one they like the most, of course. But there's also some exceptions to that, too. Like, you have, like, questions like, oh, what anime should I get into if I'm just getting into anime for the first time? It's like, sometimes you might want to think about that. Like, oh, which of these anime, not necessarily is my favorite, but would be a good starting point to someone who's new to anime. I would always suggest Studio Ghibli films for that. I think Ghibli films are great starting points for anime. Because they show the weird wackiness of anime, but while also being, Disney enough, basically, is how I would describe it. Zatoichi on the Road. That was the other one I was trying to think of, but for some reason blanked on the name. Yeah. New Tale of Zatoichi or Zatoichi on the Road would probably be the two that I would suggest that really give a really good feel for who Ichi is as a character. It really, like, also showcases, like, what this series really stands for and can be, while also just being, very entertaining and fun. So I think those two would probably be my first choices. If you're not going to necessarily watch them in order and just want an example of, like, oh, which one should I watch first, those would probably be my choices. But, I mean, watching them in order, I think, is, perfectly reasonable to do. That's what I'm doing. So, yeah. But I would like to hear your thoughts on this film in particular and just the series in general so far. Obviously, no spoilers for the future. I don't want to know, like, any spoilers for how future movies go and all. But, yeah, let me know your thoughts. For now, though, before we close this out, I do want to remind you all that we have a lot of great content to check out on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions. And on Monday, specifically, we also have YouTube, or at least YouTube adjacent reactions. Pretty much anything that doesn't quite fit into a normal series or movie reaction goes in that slot. And speaking of movie reactions, outside of this week, which was a special week, we normally do movie reactions on Saturdays and Sundays. I pre-record them during the week, upload them on the weekend, so that every day has some sort of reaction content going on for it. Mind you, this weekend there will not be any movie reactions because we did our movie reactions during the week. 5 movies, 5 days. That's enough for now, I think. But yeah, normally they're every Saturday and Sunday, and that will come back into play starting next week. We also have some Let's Play content on the channel. We have Horizon Forbidden West. That is going up every other day. So you'll have seen one yesterday on Thursday, you'll see one tomorrow on Saturday, and then Monday and Wednesday, and so far and so on. Every other day. We also have Poppy Playtime on Saturdays. That is a donation reward Let's Play for Venom. And if you want to know how to donate for a future PS5 Let's Play, go to the channel search, and all in one search, type in June Double Reward Month PS5. It should take you to the correct video that will let you know everything you need to in regards to how to donate for a future PS5 Let's Play. So, that all being said, thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. And yeah, for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.